Hey, what's up, everybody? I just wanted to do a quick live stream, real quick, to kind of talk about these sort of things that are happening. Let me get the chat out and stuff. And I was having problems streaming to YouTube, but it looks like it started. So if you're in the YouTube chat, let me know. Actually, let me get Periscope and Twitch going too. All right, I flew back from Montana last night, and kind of kind of still out of it from this weekend. But what I just see all this stuff happening right now on YouTube. I mean, just on Twitter, on Facebook. I'm seeing all this, all of this hysteria over this virus, and it's really starting to concern me. And the concerns that I have are really not based on the virus itself. It's the government. Like, what's happening right now is sort of just out of control. It's out of control. And hopefully, guys, if you're in the Facebook chat, um, I'll be able to see your comments because I want to interact with you guys today. But I'm also streaming on YouTube, so if you go to youtube.com/CrownKnightsMedia, I'll definitely see that chat as well. But what I wanted to address is the sort of hysteria that's happening with this virus in terms of the way the government is handling it. Now, as of now, I have not been affected by the virus. It's been seen in ASU and Tempe, but there hasn't been this drastic people dying on the street sort of thing that we see in the third world countries anyway, at all. But yet the way the government is reacting, it should be very concerning. And so, but before we get started, I want to address some comments that I made earlier this week, and I still stand by them. And I think it's important to maybe do a little live video just to clarify it some more. My church put out a statement that I 100% agree with, and my church, Apologia Church, made some changes to how they worship in terms of. In terms of, hey, look, we're not going to do the handshaking, hugging thing. We're going to try to avoid that. We're going to do a little bit communion a little bit differently. So there's all these sort of changes. But one of the things they said in their statement that I thought was really encouraging as a member there is they're not changing their directives because of the command of the government to do so. And this is what I want to talk about. A church has every right to determine how they worship for the safety of their participants. I completely 100% think that if even if a church was in the very center of the breakout, of the outbreak, if the church was in the very center of this outbreak, the church should have a right to say, look, guys, let's we have the ability to live stream service. Let's do that. Of course, it would mean not having communion that week. That's a concern of doing the live stream services. Is there's no way to biblically take communion with a live stream service. So all the churches that are saying we're going to live stream the service, well, you're not having communion, and that gets into, well, we don't have communion every week anyway, and that's another that's another theological discussion altogether. But you're not having baptisms through live streams. It's just a mess. Now, but I agree that the church should be able to do that should the need arise. Should there be legitimate fears or concerns, especially for the elderly. I question how many elderly people are going to watch church service on a live stream. That doesn't seem like a big thing that they're going to be able to take advantage of that much anyway. But what I want to, just to be clear, I think the church has the ability to be able to do that. Oh, yeah, it looks like Facebook is blowing up right now. Hi, Facebook. Um, so, again, the church has the right and they have the obligation to protect their people. The concern that I have is when the churches, as many churches did this week, referred to Romans 13 and submission of the government as their basis for doing this. The government has no authority to tell the church not to meet, not to congregate, even in terms of natural disasters. Actually, I think especially in terms of natural disasters, like a virus outbreak or something like that, the church all the more needs to stand in defiance of the government and say, we are going to be a place where people can come and worship. Like if the coronavirus, let's say the coronavirus gets really bad in a few weeks, like it's just an outright pandemic, right? It gets, I mean, the hospitals are filled. Everything's a disaster. People need to know that they can come to the church. People need to go to church during an event like this. A lot of people got upset with me because I said that God sent a global judgment of this virus, and that's true. If this virus is a big deal, if it's a massive problem, it is a judgment. It's for sure is a judgment on the economy and stuff right now. And people were upset. It was like, oh, God doesn't send well, he does send judgments. And so if God is sending a judgment right now to the local church, I mean, not to the church, but to the nations through this virus, the last thing we need to do is come up with ways where we can not meet and gather and repent and beg God to save us from the virus. Like that just concerns me a lot. And what we're seeing here really is the statism that is so entwined in our worship. The absolute unending submission to Romans 13 that we're seeing right now is really, really concerning to me. The response to Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or whoever issued the decree that churches cannot gather at more than 250. I think Trump just banned gatherings of more than 10 people. I saw somebody posted that, sent that to me. I don't know the authenticity of that, but the fact that the church would go, yes, government, we're not going to meet anymore because you said so, should legitimately bring concern. And the reason I say that is, and I'll get to the chat in a minute, but the reason I say that is because the government doesn't have any more authority to tell you not to meet than they do to say what color the walls in your church or the carpet should be. They have just as much authority. Now, a lot of people are saying, and they're saying, well, look, the government isn't commanding the churches. There's actually two things that they're saying. The first thing they're saying is, well, the government isn't commanding the churches not to meet. It's just a recommendation. To that, I want to say, the government doesn't just politely recommend things. That's not the way the government works. The government doesn't politely recommend you to have both taillights on the back of your car. They might give you a warning, but I guarantee you, if the police were to give you a warning for a taillight and you were to take that warning and you rip it up and drive away with the cop still standing at the window, the very next course of action would be the cop would take his gun and shoot your tires out. They'd pull the gun out. And so even a warning from the government is not a polite recommendation. The only way the government enforces things is with the threat of a gun, without the force of a gun. That's how the government works. So when the government is saying to businesses, for example, not even churches, if they're saying to businesses, look, we think the businesses should shut down. And people are like, well, yeah, this is just a recommendation. No one's forcing the businesses to. Well, what happens when the businesses decide to stay open anyway? What if I owned a business and I said, I'm not going to not be able to support and fund my family because of the government recommendation? Well, at that point, the government starts to send in military, or they start to send in their police officers or sheriff's departments to come in and force the businesses closed. And that's a problem. That's a problem, just for businesses in general. And the second thing people were saying was, well, the government is forcing every organization to shut down. It doesn't matter if it's a business or a church or a concert or a bar, any sort of gathering in the government. So it's not discriminatory here. But to me, that's even more concerning, that the government has a power to completely destroy the First Amendment like that. Now, so if we pull up the Constitution, I'll pull it up real quick. I just want to read it and make sure I have the right text. Okay, so it says, yeah, obviously. So let me just pull this up real quick. Yeah. So okay. So it says pretty clearly. Let me pull it up so you can see it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, of the press, the right of the people, and here it is, or the right of the people to peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So the government can't stop people from peaceful assembly. The government just can't do it. It cannot be done. And it's concerning to me that when the government does say, hey, look, no more peaceful assemblies, the church goes, okay, as long as they're doing it to everybody, that's totally fine. And that bothers me. That bothers me a lot. Here's Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio says right here. Oh, that screen is off. Let's adjust that for you. There you go. He says, please stop spreading stupid rumors about martial law. He misspelled it, by the way. I think that's important. Please stop spreading stupid rumors about martial law. Completely false. We will continue to see closings and restrictions on hours of non-essential businesses in certain cities and states. But that is not martial law. Well, my question is, and this is very simple, what happens if the businesses refuse to shut down? You know, people are saying, well, yeah, it's not martial law because there's no military enforcing it. But my question is, what if the businesses refuse to shut down? What if the businesses say, no, we're going to stay open? What happens then? See, the government doesn't make friendly recommendations. They don't friendly recommend that you don't go over the speeding limit. If you go over the speeding limit and you ignore the police officer, they will kill you. The police will kill you over breaking a speed limit. You will die. There's not a crime that is too small that police will not kill you on the street for it. This is absolutely true. This is how the government enforces things. So this is concerning to me. And we're not even at like critical outbreak. We're not even at critical outbreak. And this is what we're seeing right now. We're seeing all this threats of concern and fear and all this danger. This is from Ron Paul. He said it's called the coronavirus hoax. And he says here, try to make sure you can see this. He says, government loves crises because when people are fearful, they are more willing to give up freedoms and promises that the government will take care of them. After 9/11, for example, Americans accepted the near total destruction of their civil liberties in the Patriot Act's hollow promises of security. It is ironic to see Democrats who tried to impeach President Trump last month for abuse of power demanding that the administration grab more power and authority in the name of fighting a virus that thus far has killed less than 100 Americans. I mean, Ron Paul hits it right on the head. And here's the thing. Like, we are so quick in America to give up our liberties because we're afraid of something, that we just automatically assume the state has our best interest. I make Facebook posts about this, and they're the same people over and over and over again. They'll comment on my post and defend the government every single time. The government can do no wrong. This is a government that murders 1 million babies a year because of abortion. And we're supposed to trust them that they have our best interest in mind with these things. It's out of control. And it bothers me a lot. It really, really bothers me a lot, especially when we see this, the church being so willing to shut down at the request of the government. And I just can't support, and this is important. This is real. I don't think people understand how important and critical this is. When the church says yes to the government, we will not meet and gather for worship. Even if the government is absolutely right that the church shouldn't meet. The church has no basis to not meet at the demand of the state. Now the church can say, we've heard what the state says, but based on our own elders gathering, based on our own decisions, based on how we see that we should help our people, our church has decided not to meet. We live in a city where the outbreak is incredibly high, like let's say Seattle or something. Our church has decided we are going to live stream sermons and messages momentarily based on our own rationale. The church has every right to do that. But when the church appeals to Romans 13 and says we have to do what the government says, the church has just submitted its authority to worship and gather to the state. Romans 13 is not all-encompassing. Romans 13 doesn't give the government unlimited power to stop the church from worship. I don't know. Like, it's amazing to me because I've always thought that if the United States government were to say churches cannot worship anymore, I always thought there'd be churches that would go, most of the churches anyway, especially the mainstream Reformed ones, would go, no way, we're not doing that. And to see John MacArthur's church, to see Grace Community Chapel and those guys, to see them just appeal to Gavin Newsom, an awful pagan governor, and then to see other churches who I respect in the state of California to copy John MacArthur's statement and use that as the basis for why they're not meeting. And these are good churches, by the way. These are not churches that have flashy worship services that cost thousands of dollars every Sunday to run. This isn't churches that are looking for an excuse to not have to, pay the electric bill because it's really high, or pay an enormous staff that week. These are churches, small, tiny churches, solid Reformed churches that are taking John MacArthur's lead, and they're shutting down because of Romans 13. So let's I want to pull up Romans 13. Let's look at Romans 13 for a minute. Okay, so Romans 13 is pretty clear. Let's get the ESV version up. Let's get a legitimate version. Here we go. Okay. So Romans 13 says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authority, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist that have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. So we see the context, right? The context is submit to government. Why? Why do we submit to government? Because rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. What would you have? No fear for ones who are in authority? Then do what is good, and you will receive the government's approval, for he's God's servant for your good. This is speaking about an issue of justice here. This is talking about submitting to the government in matters of justice. And this assumes that the government has the standard of justice. This assumes that when the Bible says that the government is to terrorize those who do good, terrorize those who do evil and reward those who do good, it assumes that the government knows what is evil and is punishing rightly. The text has to assume that. So when the government starts to do corrupt things, like let's say abortion, for example, the church doesn't submit to that. The church doesn't say, well, I mean, the government says that abortion's okay. And so the same sense is now we're talking about, well, now the government is saying that churches can't meet. The government doesn't have an authority to say that. So the Bible says, let's pull up this famous passage because we seem to forget about it. This is in Acts chapter 5, verse 29. Let me pull it up real quick and I'll put it on the screen. We'll start in verse 27. Woo, that's a pretty let me try to shrink this window down a little bit for you guys so you can see the whole context. Well, maybe if I just do that. There we go. Okay. So we see in verse 27, it says, and when they had brought them, they set them before the council, and the high priest questioned them, saying, "We strictly charge you not to teach in the name, yet here you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching, and you intend to bring this man's blood among us." But Peter and the apostles answered, "We must obey God rather than men. The God of our fathers raised Jesus, whom you killed by hanging him on a tree. God exalted him at the right hand of the leader and Savior, and to give repentance to Israel and forgiveness of sins. And we are witnesses to these things, and so is the Holy Spirit, whom God has given you to those who obey them." So we see right there in the text that there's only so much that the government can ban. And this isn't even like high-level academic eisegesis. Very specifically in that text, the government said, you are not to teach in the name of Jesus. You're not to gather. You're not to do these things. And the response from the apostles are, we obey God, not man. That's what they said. Now, were they resisting Romans 13 here? Were they resisting Romans 13? I don't understand. What was the government giving them a friendly suggestion not to teach in the name of Jesus? So this is really clear. It's very easy to see what's happening. Hold on one second. My wife is texting me right now. So, I mean, we can see this very, very clearly. This isn't high-level eisegesis. It's very clearly the government said you're not to teach in the name of Jesus, and the apostles said, no, we're going to teach in the name of Jesus. So, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult at all. So yeah. So that's what's happening. I mean, I don't understand. Let me just make sure. Okay. My wife actually was calling me to make sure I talk about San Francisco. So let me pull this up real quick and see, because I haven't seen this. That's actually why she was calling me. So she's a good producer. San Francisco Bay Area on lockdown of a coronavirus. Stay home as much as possible until April 7th. So residents are being told. San Francisco Bay residents will be required to stay home beginning Tuesday, except for taking care of essential needs due to the spread of the coronavirus. Mayor Landon Breed announced Monday in a joint press conference with the leaders of 6 counties the requirements will come into force at midnight in an effort to slow the spread of coronavirus, although necessary government functions and essential stores will still be open. Well, what about churches? See, now you're required to stay home. What happens if you don't stay home? What happens if you don't stay home? You go out and a police officer says, go back to your house. And you say, I'm not going back to my house. I'm going to a friend's house for Bible study, and you can't stop me. Does the officer put his hand on the gun? Does he handcuff you? Does he take you to prison? What happens? Like, these are questions. These are questions we have to answer now. We cannot wait. Look, guys, please share this video. Like, if you're watching right now, please share this video. I don't know. I know, like, YouTube was having some technical difficulties with streaming, so I don't even know if anybody's even watching on YouTube. Yeah, it's saying my current bitrate on YouTube is at 0, and I got a warning from from Restream saying YouTube is acting up. So I don't even know what's going on with YouTube, but if you guys are watching this on Facebook, please share this right now. This is real. Look, okay, last week was okay. Okay, last week is done. Last Sunday was done, right? Last Sunday, churches shut down. They live streamed. Okay, it's over. It's in the past. It's done. And now, things are growing. They're getting crazier. And now San Francisco is saying, you're required to stay home. So now, the government is not suggesting you don't worship and gather for worship anymore. Do you understand that? The government is not... You are required by the threat and full force of the government, at the point of a gun, to stay home and not gather for worship anymore. At what point do we say, we obey God and not man, and we gather anyway? How long is this threat of this coronavirus going to be a thing? And here's the thing, even if coronavirus goes away and all the businesses open up and the church is free to gather some more, now they know that it works, guys. They know that it works. And I know you're saying, well, this is just conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. The government has infected people before. There's stories of how the government infected black people for testing years and years and years ago. This is not a conspiracy theory. If the government goes and they use this coronavirus thing and the crazy statist liberals figure out, hey, you know what? This is a way we can control the people. This is what they will do. This is what the government does. The government controls people. The government finds ways to control people. And they especially find ways to control the worship of the people. We see this in China. Imagine being in China where you're under threat of death just for gathering for worship without a virus. Then the virus comes in Wuhan and they issue this mandatory quarantine. Does the church go, okay, yeah, we're not going to worship now? I mean, now the government has a valid reason for us not to worship. I mean, at first, it's obey God but not man. But now that there's a virus, we're just going to sit back and just let things happen. This is real. Guys, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. It's not something that we just sit back and there's more people joining the stream. So I just want to go back and clarify for people that are new here. If the church wants to make the decision to suspend worship for a week, to just do live stream, or even just say, you know what, we're only going to meet in small groups for a few weeks while this passes, the church has every right to do so. I'm not saying the church can't decide how and they worship in times of special circumstances. What I am saying is the government cannot issue a command and the church cannot say Romans 13 applies here. Because Romans 13 does not apply here. It doesn't apply. Romans 13 does not apply to the government banning the worship and meeting. This is why we have a First Amendment. The First Amendment says that the government shall make no law prohibiting the peaceful assembly of people. And a lot of people are saying, well, this isn't martial law. It is martial law. It's the very beginning of phases of martial law. Government tyranny comes in increments. It comes in increments. It comes in steps. At first, it's a recommendation by the government not to worship. And then you have San Francisco where they say, well, it's required now. It's required. You are commanded by full force of the government under threat of arrest to stay in your home. I mean, the church has given up so much authority. Look at this. Look at this. For the past 4 years, the church has been saying, we don't agree with government health care. We don't agree with government-controlled health care. We don't agree with government-controlled health care. We're against government health care. And then the government comes in and says, look, guys, there's a disease. There's a virus and flu that's spreading. And we friendly suggest you don't worship. And the church says, yes, government. Whatever you say, government, whatever you say for health, about our health, we trust the government to dictate your opinions about health to us. This is not how it worked. The church is the one that started healthcare. The church is the one that was pulling bodies out of the street that the government gave up on, and they formed the very first hospitals. There's a reason why we have Catholic hospitals. There's a reason why we have Methodist hospitals. There's a reason why we have Presbyterian hospitals. And they're still named that today. It's because the church started those hospitals. And then you had crony capitalism come in the way, insurance policies and all these things, government lobbying, government got involved making laws and regulations on healthcare. And now we have the problem with healthcare that we have all along. But it was the church that started healthcare. And the government would deal with the church over matters of healthcare. And now the church is just accepting anything the government says, up to the point of not worshiping together. Not worshiping together. This is very important. Again, I've made this distinction several times. I'm not against the church making their own decisions. The elders making their own decisions. But they cannot make those decisions because the government told them so. This is not a joke. This is something that's very, very serious. It's very, very serious, guys. Like, I'm really, really upset. Like, it's really, really bothered me a lot. Like, it's really a problem. I don't know how to make this point any more clearer. And I've had friends on Facebook that have been posting the same things I've been saying. And people are absolutely losing their minds over this. They're losing their minds at the idea that a Christian would say, we shouldn't let the government control whether or not we can worship. Oh, my friend Austin just said a military helicopter just went over my apartment. Oh, man. I hear it, too. Yeah, I hear it. He's around here. I hear it. Oh, man. But this is true. This is so true. I don't want to be Alex Jones. Right. So this is the problem. You don't want to be Alex Jones. You don't want to come off as a crazy, angry person that just accepts any government conspiracy as absolutely valid and true. You don't want to do it. And I don't want to do it. But history has shown time and time again that you can't let the government inch their way towards attacking religious liberty. You just can't let the government inch their way. They can't get an inch. They can't get a millimeter of our religious liberty. They just can't do it. And when churches, good, solid churches, say we're going to just, because of Romans 13, we're just going to let this happen. Like, that bothers me to no end. I'm going to see if I can find, you guys give me a minute. I'm going to see if I can find a screenshot of that, one of the statements from the church. I hope I can find it. I don't know who sent it to me though. So I'm live streaming right now. Yeah, I don't have it. But anyway, let's go to the comment section. Let's see what's going on in the comments. See what people are saying. Let's see. So let's see. Grant Thunberg. What did he say? He says, "This is your best one yet." Yeah, I'm a little bit, because I'm really mad. Like, this really bothers me a whole lot. It's very concerning to me to see this sort of thing. Like at some point we have to reject this on its face. At some point we have to say no. We're going to meet. The churches need to be the ones that are gathering so that people who have lost loved ones can turn to for hope and forgiveness. And to go on. Like, we can't ban the churches in a time of crisis. That's the most absurd thing I've ever seen in my life. It's really just out of hand right now. And I really wish I could find this screenshot that somebody sent me of one of the churches. I think it was Grace Community Church's statement. So, but I can't find the screenshot that I had of it. Maybe if somebody has it, they can PM it to me, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so this is just. But anyway, I'll take questions. Let's do that. I'm going to take questions from Facebook chat right now, and I guess because I don't think anybody's watching on YouTube because of the problem with the streaming system at the moment. So if there's any questions, somebody said it's Phil Johnson's Twitter. Let's look that up. Again, I have a lot of respect for Phil Johnson. But this was always the concern of the eschatology that we see. Okay, so yeah, let's pull this up. This is just okay. So Phil Johnson says the GCC elders, Grace Community Chapel Church elders, discussed whether the California ban on large gatherings is an Acts 5:29 issue or a Romans 13:1 situation. Our consensus was that since this is a health emergency and applies to everyone, as opposed to a decree targeting the church for persecution, we're going to act in accord with Romans 13. We recognize that a decree from the governor like this could set a dangerous precedent, but we'll revisit the question if calls for canceling church service threaten to become a repeated pattern or a standard knee-jerk response to flu epidemics. You guys have already set the precedent that it's okay, though. See, this is the thing. Like, sure, it's a one-time thing. It's a one-time, let's say it's a one-time thing. But now they know it works. Now they know it works. Austin, I don't have your batteries, man. I don't have them. I looked for them before you got here. So, you already know it works. So, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss. The GCC elders discuss whether it's Acts 5:29 or a Romans 13:1 issue. It's always an Acts 5:29 issue when the government says you can't worship. There's no such thing as a Romans 13 issue when the government says you can't worship. There's no such thing. And this is why issues, and I've commented on Grace Community Church's, I've commented on their stances on the government before, and I always said, one of these days there's going to be a time when there's a legitimate concern that's happening in regards to threat to worship. And the sort of thinking that comes from Grace Community Church, they're going to be the first ones to suspend worship because the government says so. Now look, here's the thing. This is the thing. This is very important. If Grace Community Church would have said, you know what, we the elders, we decided, hey, we have a high elderly population in our church. It's just not wise for us to meet. We're going to do the live stream thing. I don't care. They completely have the right to do that. They completely have the right to do that. But they don't have that right. They don't have that right. They don't have that right. Oh man, my mind just went blank. I'm just so distracted by this military helicopter that's just circling my house right now. I don't even remember what I said. They don't have the right. It's just they don't have the elders of the church don't have the right to submit to Romans 13 when the government says not to worship ever. It's always an Acts 5:29 issue at that point. I don't know how this could be any more clear. Like, I wouldn't even be having this conversation about Grace Community Church. I wouldn't be having this conversation. So it bothers me a lot that we're so quick to take this step, and we're so quick to justify those sort of actions from the government. It's just, I think people in America, I think we trust our government so much that when they can even tell you not to meet, you submit and say it's okay. I think this thing from Phil Johnson right here is probably the absolute most concerning thing. It says, we recognize that a decree from the governor like this could set a dangerous precedent. Yeah, it does set a dangerous precedent. And you guys have set that precedent by accepting it as legitimate. All the other churches in California that look to your example have now followed in your footsteps and submitted to the government in stopping the worship of Christians during a time of crisis. During a time of crisis is when we need worship. If this is really, really bad and it's an obvious judgment from God, which I think it's silly to think that it's not at least in some way a judgment of God. I think it was Doug Wilson that said, it's interesting the Wuhan virus started to spread and reach peak after the president of China refused to let that Christian pastor go. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I think God does these sort of things. And so I don't think it's outrageous to claim this is a judgment of God. I mean, that virus doesn't go anywhere without the hands of God, the sovereignty of God. The virus is from God. And so just to see that they automatically know it's a dangerous precedent, yet they're doing it anyway. And it's not it could be a dangerous precedent. It is a dangerous precedent. You've shown an awful tyrannical statist governor that you will Romans 13 yourself out of being able to gather for worship. So, all right. I'm willing to take questions. There's a lot of people in the chat. I really wish YouTube chat was up. I mean, I really wish. Maybe, I don't know, if you go to youtube.com/CrownRightsMedia, can you even see it? I don't think I'm being suppressed on YouTube, by the way, if that's what it is. Let's see if I go to my videos. Oh, it says I'm live now. Oh, it's listed as unlisted. Oh, that was my fault then. Well, hold on. Let's see if we can change that midstream. I think we can, actually. Yeah, we can. Make it public now. Maybe now let's see what happens. Yeah, now it's public. Oh, man. All this time. I could have been getting super chats or something. Oh, well, if you're watching on Facebook, support me on Patreon. That stinks. That was a fail. That's because I was having technical difficulties when we were just starting out. But I think if you click on it, you guys can go back and watch the whole thing, right? Yeah, you can go. You guys can go back and watch the whole thing if you're on my YouTube channel. Sorry about that. That's my bad. Well, now we got people watching from YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Hello, Facebook. All right, I'm gonna take questions. So. Hey, Grant. I'm sorry. Grant was asking about questions. So just for people that are just joining in YouTube right now, what you missed. I'm trying to show that I'm trying to show that we can't just submit to the government anytime we want. We just can't do it. If the church wants to gather, if the church wants to suspend their gathering, they have every right to do so for the safety of the people. But they just can't do it because the government says so. Ever. Never. Ever. Never. We have to put our foot down. Have to stop it right then. So let's see if there's a question here. Joe says, I understand the reasoning of trying to minimize the spread of the virus, but they are conditioning us to get used to law enforcement controlling every aspect of our life. The government is going to enjoy this, and I fear they will be enamored by exercising this type of power. That's exactly right. I mean, there's this way. Phil Johnson admitted it. It could set a dangerous precedent. That's what he said. That's coming from him. So I think that's a concern, and I think I think people should absolutely respond to this. Johnny says, sorry, can you touch on leaders deciding what is in the best interest of the church versus obedience to tyrannical government regulations? Yeah, this is how it works. If the leaders, Grant, you says to check the above article, but the link didn't come through, man. Maybe you could PM me on Facebook and I'll pull it up. But look, so here's the basic difference. Here's the basic thing. A Romans 13 issue is if the government says your church building needs ADA requirements, you should probably just go ahead and follow the ADA requirements. If the government says you're not allowed to worship because of these ADA requirements, I think the church should worship anyway. I think they should. I don't think the government has any authority to do so. Now, that doesn't mean, according to Romans 13, you can't just go ahead and, build your. I remember when my church in Virginia was building their new building out. They built the stage, and they had a small stage. They didn't have a lot of room for, like drums and guitar and a singer anyway. And they built the stage, and they weren't going to get occupancy because they didn't have a handicap ramp on the stage in their church. So, you know, I mean, at that point you go, well, we're going to worship anyway. But because of Romans 13, we'll just go ahead and submit to the government and we'll build this stinking ADA ramp, even though it's not needed, because they actually had a portable ramp for one of the guys that spoke, who was in a wheelchair. Actually, they just had a portable ramp, but to build a ramp would have taken away stage anyway. So apparently some rules came out and some loopholes or whatever, and they didn't need the ramp at all, so they didn't build it. So that's sort of the issue that I see there. Somebody says, is it worthy to leave a church because they canceled based on Romans 13? No, you don't leave. Don't leave a church because they canceled. I'm not telling people to leave their church. But I do think the people in the congregation should come together and publicly voice their concern to the elders of the issue. And not one or two people in the church. I think the church needs to speak out against that to their elders and let the elders know that they don't agree with that call at all. I think that's completely acceptable. And you can do that lovingly and graciously, and not in a way that divides the church and splits up the church or anything like that. But I do think there should be, there has to be. We have to speak out against this. Like, it's just got to happen. So Travis says, just switched here from Facebook. Thank you, Travis. And if you're on Facebook, you can do the same. YouTube.com/ChronoNightsMedia. It says, question for you. What do you think about the quarantines and people justifying them in the law of Leviticus? It's a very good point. There weren't any civil requirements in terms of like death penalty for those sort of cleanliness laws. And most of it was individuals quarantining themselves. So if you can pull up the passage for me, Travis, I would love to go through that and read through that, and we can work through that together on here. I think that'd be interesting. But out of love for neighbor, you should do that. And there's punishments in the Bible. Let's say, for example, if you didn't build a roof around, if you didn't build a fence around your roof, if somebody fell, you were responsible for that. So I would say that, well, maybe if somebody got sick, you would be responsible for them getting sick because you didn't quarantine yourself. But that's not the government restricting worship. That's on an individual case-by-case basis. So somebody says the hysteria is hitting here a few days delayed as things for deep South Texas. Okay. So let me see if there's more questions on Facebook. I was just going through the YouTube chat. Christopher Lazarus says, but it was commanded. Yes, it was. It's just because something is commanded doesn't mean that there's government restrictions for it. So, for example, lying is a command, but there's not a government crime against lying in the Old Testament. So that's important to understand when we're dealing with these things, is that when you look at the Old Testament law as your basis for application, how involved is the government in the enforcement of that Old Testament law? So that's the key. So there's a lot of things that the government enforces in the Old Testament. Adultery, for example, it's a sin and a crime. And so there's those sort of things. Grant says he messaged me. Let me see if it came out. I didn't see. I don't see it on Facebook, man. Where'd you message it to me? Did you message me on Twitter? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where you sent it to me. I don't have it on my Facebook, Grant. So, thanks. Wherever you sent it, I guess. Yeah. So again, going back to what Christopher was saying, it was commanded, but there was no, unless you can show me otherwise. There's no penalties from the government uh, if you refuse to do so. So some things, it was a sin. So yeah. So as I said, Lazarus, a lot of things were a sin. It was commanded by the government, but there weren't any crimes if it was disobeyed. So there was no sentencing restrictions if something was disobeyed. Marcus, do you think that the virus was engineered? No, I don't think the virus was engineered. I think it was engineered by God, but I don't think it was. I mean, I've heard the rumors that there was a bio facility in Wuhan and the virus was used to stop the protest in China. Um, if that's true, it could be true. That's the thing. Like, I don't trust the government. I don't trust the government for these sort of things. Um, so, here it is. Got it, Grant. Let's see what your article says. You have no idea what's coming to get you. Italian citizens' grave warning to world after experiencing coronavirus outbreak. A Twitter thread has gone viral in which Italian citizens describe the severe pandemic his country is going through and warn those in the rest of the world to take it more seriously to minimize death and suffering. The thread is prefaced by its author for chastising people for going out to restaurants and bars. And there's the whole the whole thread. Look, I'm not saying that the virus isn't going to be bad, or that this is a legitimate danger. I believe it could be. I really do. I think it's a giant concern for a lot of people. I have elderly people that I care about very much that I don't want to see get this virus. And I think it is going to be very bad. Or it could be very bad. But that's all the more reason for the church to gather and worship. So, somebody said God didn't manufacture the virus, he allowed it to release it. There's a difference. Viruses are designed by God and as a part of his world. Even viruses that are manufactured by man are still allowed to exist because of the forthright and knowledge of God. That's going to get into a sovereignty of God issue there. But absolutely, God allowed this virus to be released. He absolutely created a world and a system in which this could be made. And God is 100% responsible for every single person that becomes infected with this virus because he allowed it to happen. He allows all things to happen. So that's just a sovereignty of God thing right there. But yeah, that is that's just the sovereignty of God in this. God is allowing this to happen, and he's created a world and a system in which we can do these sort of things. So let's see if we got any more questions in the chat. Looks like YouTube's just now hit it up because I made it public late into the show. But anyway, guys, I'm glad you guys in YouTube. I'm glad you guys are here. Scarpa, you're gonna have to rephrase that question because you typed it in a way that doesn't make sense. But I think I know where you're going with it. But just rephrase it again, and then I'll answer it. Somebody says, "What do you do if your employer wants you not to attend church?" Well, then you don't attend your employer. You find another job. That's what you do. Okay, so that's your question. Okay. Yeah, you just find another job. That's pretty simple. So, God is the initial mover, right? Exactly. So, let's see what's going on Twitter right now, because there's usually always something that's taking place. Um, you know what's really sad about this whole thing too is just how the economy is responding to it. And I don't have a lot of money in the economy, so I don't have like a lot of stocks or anything like that. So, but it's sad to me that Trump was doing so well with the economy, and then it just crashes right before the election, and he's going to get all the blame for the loss um, over this. And it's not really. We're not really in his control, but he's going to get 100% of the blame. And that, I think, too, is leading to a lot of the hysteria, too, because I think the Democrats could see this as a ploy literally to tank the economy, and that will be a huge help for them. If this becomes a disaster, it helps them get elected. And don't think that the Democrats are above that sort of thinking. That is exactly what Democrats do. They never waste an opportunity or disaster to impose the government on people. This is why school shootings lead to government banning of weapons and firearms. So, so God didn't introduce sin, man did. Yes, man introduced sin, but God created the world, and when the moment He said, "Let there be light," He knew everything was going to happen and planned it. I mean, you just can't get around that. So that's another discussion altogether. Just want to be very clear that God is absolutely sovereign over this. So what's going on in YouTube chat right now? Look at this, man. I'm glad that people are watching on the YouTube chat. I do apologize that I got to you guys so late with that. That's unlike me a lot. So, so Scarpa says, people in my workplace are saying that I shouldn't attend church because there are 50 people in my congregation. Well, you have to tell your job to go pound sand. You just have to go tell your job to go pound sand. Nobody has, this is the point of this whole thing, is nobody, not the state, not your employer, nobody has the right to force you not to go to church. So how many people work at your office building, Scarpa? If 50 people is enough for your work to tell you not to go to church, how many people work with you? And if you're working from home, it doesn't really matter if you go to church, right? That's what I say. So, yeah, I would ignore your boss. Just don't tell him you went to church that day. So, okay, this is a good question. He says, how do you think the free market can take care of this better than the government, especially given medicine and vaccines? Okay, so this is how this works, right? So in the socialist economies, there's no incentive to get medicine and vaccines. There's no incentives to build new hospitals. The only incentive to do so is if the government dictates and orders it. But in a capitalist free market system, there's financial incentives to be able to build new hospital beds, to hire new nurses, to fly in doctors from all over the world, to create new vaccines. There's a financial incentive. There was a tweet a while, I guess like maybe yesterday I saw it, and the tweet showed an empty store, and the caption was, "I thought you'd only see this in socialist countries. Take that, capitalism." But, as somebody rightly replied, that in a capitalist system, those shelves are going to be refilled very quickly. The factories are going to be working double time. There's financial incentive. And, of course, there's price gouging, which we're not seeing a lot of, which is a shame, because we wouldn't see this sort of shortages if there was legitimate price gouging, like there should be. And I'm a fan of price gouging, if you guys didn't know. Yeah, the price fixing is definitely the problem. The fact that why uh, does the law of supply and demand not work for toilet paper? It absolutely should work for toilet paper, because now you have people that legitimately need it. Like, I think my parents were going around the peninsula of Virginia, and they were looking to get some toilet paper for my grandma so she doesn't have to go out, and they couldn't find any. Now, my parents would have paid more for toilet paper, assuming it was available, but it's not available, because if you don't have price gouging, you have people that hoard valuable, neat things. So price gouging is important. The law of supply and demand is very important. God created the law of supply and demand, just like he created viruses. So that's how that works. So yeah, yeah, man. Scarborough says 18 people work at his office. I think that's a gathering. That's concerning. You should try working from home. So, yeah, I think that pretty much does it for me. Unless there's a super chat or somebody wants to come on the phone and talk to me. If anybody wants to join the Discord, let me put the Discord link up real quick. I'll get the Discord link up, and then if somebody wants to have a conversation, we can do that. That's always fun. I really like doing the Discord conversations with people. And if you have a question, you can maybe call in and call in. So let's pull up the YouTube chat. So here's the Discord link in the YouTube chat, and here's the Discord link in the Facebook chat. And we'll see if anybody wants to come in and do a call. And we will do that. Shall we? Somebody says, are there any good out? You know what? Let's talk about working from home. Let's talk about some of this. This is important. So there's a book called, it's C.R. Wiley's book. Let me see if I can find it. It's what the name of the book is. Yeah, this is it. So it's called The Household and the War for the Cosmos, Recovering a Christian Vision for the Family. And one of the things he talks about in this book, you can get it at Canon Press, by the way. One of the things he talks about is the ability for husbands to not be reliant on 9-to-5 jobs away from the home, and instead build productive homes, create homes that allow the father to be at home a majority of the time, because this is almost a blemish in today's society, or in history really, where we see that men go away to work as opposed to working from home. And so one of the good things about this coronavirus, really, I really do think it's going to be huge, is that it's going to show a lot of people's jobs don't need to be done from the office. And I think we're already seeing that now. I know people that are working from home now, and as they've said, we could have worked from home the entire time. We've been telling our bosses for years that we could work from home, and they're just now being able to see it. And that's just good for the Christian family. It's good for homeschooling. I saw hashtag homeschooling was trending on Twitter today. And there was all these women giving first-time homeschooling moms this week advice on how to homeschool their kids, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So that's a great benefit to this whole thing. I mean, that is just, the fact that kids aren't going to government schools and they're having to stay home with their parents, that's just great news. More of that, please. A lot more of that. The government education system, we need to shut that down anyway. Government education system is a fraud. And so this is again why the church should not be not meeting. The church needs to be instituting cooperative programs to help all these families who are having to homeschool now, all of a sudden. So again, another reason for the church to gather to help homeschool all these families. So I guess somebody says, what sort of jobs are good work from home jobs? I think like all call center jobs can be done from home. That can be done over IP phone systems very cheaply. I mean, Indian scammers do it. African scammers do it. They all work from home while they're doing their scan system. So if they can do it, then there's no reason the call centers can't mobilize people to go home. Of course, obviously, video production is a great work from home job. Video editing, the job that I did 2 years ago, I went into the office to do it. But honestly, I could have done the whole job from home a lot quicker, actually, than me being there. So I would have actually been far more productive doing the work from home than actually being there. That's just one of the benefits of that system. There's pros and cons, right? So, you want a team environment. You need people to come in. But if you want a productive environment, I think if you can get people to work from home, the employees will be a lot happier too. So somebody says medical billing can be done at home. Yeah, that's a good job. But also starting your own business. See, even when we ask this question about doing these sort of things from home, we always say, well, what company can hire me to do work from home? As opposed to, how can I create a company so I can work from home? I think we're really dependent on the corporate system. And so maybe our economy does crash, man. Maybe everything does tank. Maybe we have to live on ramen noodles for a while. Maybe the government does fall apart. Maybe we do have a Walking Dead scenario where every local neighborhood has to become its own functioning government. Maybe that'll be good for us. So yeah, like everything that's happening as a result of this coronavirus, minus the government, has been good. The government shutting down, the government getting away in public education and saying, hey, look, guys, we're shutting down government schools. Look at that. Look at the benefit of the government getting out of the way there already. People homeschooling, Twitter talking about homeschooling. Here's some tips and advice for homeschooling your kid. Hope you enjoy it. Please keep doing it. Don't ever send your kids back. That was trending on Twitter today. Then you see businesses realizing, hey, it's more economical to not have an office space and just let people work from home. They've been wanting to do that anyway. That's great. The only problems we're seeing in the dealing with this coronavirus is where the government is involved. And it's not the job. It's not the job of the government to handle these sorts of viral emergencies. It's the job of the church. The church needs to institute and create hospitals. This is a great time for Samaritan Ministries to step up with some plans on how they can, as the church, help people with this. It's just interesting to see the government is not capable of this. So somebody says God's definitely using this event to create the upheaval need for revival and a change in how we do things in our culture. Oh, that God's kingdom would expand through this. I think God's kingdom will expand through this. God's kingdom always expands. But it does concern me when Phil Johnson shuts down his church because the government said so. And that was the ultimate point of this whole thing, is because the government said so. If you want to shut down your church, you have every right to do that for a time. But I think the church needs to be the place where the sick come. And if you shut down your church so people don't get sick, I think there's a problem there. There's a reason why churches started hospitals. So, So somebody says, my husband is an IT consultant. He does a great deal of his work from home already. He's been busy today. Well, there's a lot of jobs. I think just as time goes on, people are going to see that we don't have to go out and do work. We can stay home, build stronger families, and I think our divorce rates will be a lot lower and all sorts of things. I don't think we should ever underestimate the importance of how working from home strengthens our families. And I think every man should work to find a way that he can generate an income from home. It's not very hard. It's not hard to do. It's not hard to make money from home anymore. You could set up a Shopify store, run a few Facebook ads, and sell some t-shirt designs very, very quickly. It's not difficult. You can get a job from a call center that does work from home. Medical billing, somebody already said. There's just tons of ways to work from home. You might have to learn new skills to do it. You might have to do that. It might take some time. It might take watching some YouTube videos, learning new skills, figuring out a way to do it. But it can happen. But it takes work. That's the kind of work that it takes to strengthen your family. So I think that's some good out of all this. But anyway, I think I think that's it for now. I think we've done. I pretty much got fired up. I feel like I'm hoarse, but it's been a good time. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for joining the chat. Thank you for being a part of the stream. You guys are awesome. We had a good following today. And Travis says, my biggest issue of starting a business is figuring out how taxation works and all the legalities of starting a business. See, that's the problem, right? That's the problem. The government's made it so hard to start a business that it's just almost impossible. There's a line from Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation, and he says, if I have an apple and you want to buy the apple, that's how hard starting a business should be. So that's exactly right. But I married my wife has an MBA, and it's her birthday today, and she's watching in the chat, in the YouTube chat. Everybody say happy birthday to my wife, Laura. Happy birthday, honey. You're beautiful, and I love you. And you're the best wife I could have ever. I mean, I would have prayed for a wife a lot less than what God gave me. That's for sure. So, is that right? A lot. Yeah, a lot less than what God gave me. I just want to make sure I say that right. So somebody said, why call out MacArthur and Phil Johnson when you know they are solid as can be? Well, just because they're solid doesn't mean they can't be wrong on things. Like, I respect John MacArthur. I respect Phil Johnson. I really do. Like, this isn't like, I'm not calling them idiots. I'm not calling them morons. What I said was, they're setting a dangerous precedent. And by Phil Johnson's own admission on his Twitter page, he admits it's a dangerous precedent. So I'm not saying anything new that they don't know. I think they made a bad decision. And I think we can say that they make a bad decision. That's totally acceptable. There's just this idea that because someone's solid or a strong believer, that if they do something publicly, especially something publicly that impacts so many people and is dangerous for so many people, like, let's just be very clear. What John MacArthur's church did is absolutely dangerous. It's dangerous. And we need to rise up and say, no, not every church should do that. No church should shut down. Look, again, and I've said this before, if they would have just shut down their church just because they felt as elders that's the right thing they should do, then they should do it. But when you say we're doing it because the government told us to, there's a problem. And look, and Ligonier did this too. Ligonier canceled the Ligonier conference And their reasoning for doing so was because of Romans 13 and what the governor of Florida said. That's unacceptable. It's just looking at, I have a lot of respect for Ligonier Ministries too. So I'm not opposed to that at all, to Ligonier at all. But again, the issue is, can the government ever recommend that the church shut down? And the answer is no. Any more than the government can recommend the color of your pews, or what hymn books you should use, or the color of the hymn books to use. They just don't have any authority to do so. And so appealing to that authority is giving them an unacceptable level of authority that they never have, won't ever have, and shouldn't ever have. But anyway, I think that's good for today. I think that live stream is good enough. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to the chat. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. I really, really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys so much for hitting that share button. And if you're on the YouTube channel, be sure to like and subscribe. You guys are amazing. I appreciate every one of you. And I don't know where my tab is to shut down. Oh, there it is. To shut down the stream. All right, guys. Everybody have a great day, and stay safe. Thanks for the $5 super chat, Grant. I almost missed it, man. You almost got me right as I hit the cancel. So thanks, Grant. Thanks, Grant, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. He says, keep it up, dude. Thanks, man. I will. So, yeah, I mean, man, the questions keep coming in the Facebook chat. Somebody says the situation may be temporary. But a super chat came. So because Grant sent a super chat, I'll answer this question from someone on the Facebook chat. She says the situation may be temporary, but what about the next situation? What will we do? See, the thing is, it works. It works. The government know it works. And so they know how to politely suggest that the churches stop meeting and gathering. So Travis Hoffel says, thanks, Marcus. Love your content. Thanks, Travis. Love your chats. So, you know what? I said I was going to join the Discord, and 2 people came in, and I completely forgot about it. But it's too late now. I might just do these live streams in the evening now, as we go through the coronavirus, and maybe we'll just quarantine ourselves through my live streams. It sounds a good way. What's up, Tony Denham? How's it going, man? So, anyways, thanks everybody again for watching. Thanks for being a part of this. And I will go ahead and end this stream. Thanks, everybody. Please be sure to share and like and subscribe and do all those things. If you're watching on Facebook, go to youtube.com/crownrightsmedia. You can find me there. Be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell, and that way you'll be alerted to other times that I do a live stream. Of course, unless I don't make it unlisted. Oh, well. Anyways, guys, stay safe and you know, wash your hands. Not because the government tells you to, because you should wash your hands.